This is the old Ultrex sensor board that we're going to be replacing in the foot pedal. They've redesigned the new part so that it covers this ribbon cable and this exposed area here. In the foot pedal parts diagram, you can see that the sensor fits up inside of the foot pedal right here. I've used the Ultrex for 3 full seasons now and have run into 3 major problems. 2 of them were related to these cables right here breaking. When they wrap around this drum, they break right up in here, right near the head unit. This is a picture of one of the Ultrex cables that broke. They have since redesigned these cables so they're specific to the Ultrex. They made these cables a lot more flexible so they can better fit around this bend. When the Ultrex steering cable starts to fail, the foot pedal will start to get a little tough to move and then snap, it'll break, and the foot pedal will then rock back and forth with no resistance. You can still control the Ultrex after the steering cable breaks by either manually moving the head back and forth or by using one of the Bluetooth connected steering systems. When the sensor board fails, the foot pedal basically just locks up. You won't be able to rock the foot pedal back and forth, but spot lock can still work, and again you can control the Ultrex by either manually moving the head or by using one of the Bluetooth steering systems. Okay, here are the steps for replacing the Ultrex sensor board. First, you want to disconnect the power to the trolling motor. You'll need to deploy the trolling motor so you can manually rotate it and change the angle of the foot pedal. To start off, we want the foot pedal in a flat position because we need to flip it over and work on the bottom. We're going to remove the screws from the bottom of the foot pedal. You do not need to remove these rubber feet. These 2 screws are special because they hold in this main control board. All of these Phillips screws will need to be removed. These 2 Phillips screws will also need to be removed, but these are the special ones that hold in the control board. And you do not need to remove the rubber feet. With the bottom plate removed, we can see inside of the foot pedal. We need to unplug the power cable to the sensor board, and that power cable is located right here. The power cable has a small locking clip that you have to unfasten. And then you can pull the power cable out of the main board. Now you can rotate the motor and have the toe of the foot pedal facing upward. Also, if you've ever tried to look for the serial number for the Ultrex, it is located right here. This is where the sensor board power cable is routed. We need to remove these clamps and cut this cable tie. This tie wrap helps to secure the momentary switch cables to the power cable of the sensor board. So we're going to use a Phillips screwdriver to remove these cable clips. And we'll cut that tie wrap off. Next, we're going to remove the potentiometer from the speed control knob. You'll need a 1/2 inch box wrench to loosen the nut. And it's really a 2-hand job because you need the other hand to press against the blue casing of the potentiometer to get it loose. This part was kind of a pain, but once you fully remove the nut, then you can just pop the potentiometer out of the knob. And be careful of the small washer that's also included in there. Now we'll flip the pedal back over and use a 3/16 punch in order to get the pivot pin out of the foot pedal. This is the pivot pin, and it has a knurled side and a slightly rounded end. We are going to punch the slightly rounded end and push it out this way. Use the 3/16 punch to start at this side. The push pin on my foot pedal required a couple of moderate taps, but I was being careful not to overdo it. Once you see the knurled side of the pivot pin start to move outward, it becomes very easy to remove. Here's a picture of the removed pivot pin with the knurled end and the slightly tapered end. With the pin removed, you can take off the top part of the foot pedal. This exposes the old sensor board that we're going to remove. Be careful of these magnets right here that are in this rocker arm. It's possible that when you remove the top of the foot pedal, that the magnets will fall out. You can see the magnets right here and here. So if they fall out, you can follow this diagram and place them back into the lower rocker arm. These 4 Phillips screws will need to be removed in order to replace this board. Now you can remove the sensor board. Pay attention to the way that the power cable is routed. You can use that same routing method for the new replacement board. Now you can remove these clips from the old sensor board and reattach them to the new power cable. The new sensor will slide into this slot using these 2 keyways. After securing the sensor board, you'll want to make sure that the power cable is rerouted. Reattach the cable clamps and make sure the momentary switch wires are secured to the power cable. Also, temporarily refasten the potentiometer to the speed control knob. This way you can make sure that the ribbon cable is not twisted. Now we're going to have to reattach the top of the foot pedal, and we're going to need this Phillips screwdriver to help us re-index and to keep this lower rocker straight so we can get the pin back through here. This picture just illustrates how we're using the Phillips screwdriver to keep everything aligned as we push the pin back through. Now we'll utilize the Phillips screwdriver to keep everything aligned while we get the pivot pin started. As you push the pin through, the Phillips screwdriver will just slide out. Now we have to replace the speed control potentiometer. The trick I used was to place the washer and the nut on the plastic platform. And then I could push it onto the knob and thread the nut down onto the lock washer. Once secured, you can test the knob and make sure that the ribbon cable is not twisted. Now you can flip the pedal over and plug in the sensor board power cable, making sure it clicks. Replace the bottom board and tighten in the 2 screws for the main control panel. Now you can fasten the rest of the screws in the bottom plate. Plug in the trolling motor power and power on the foot pedal for testing. Now we should be able to move the pedal back and forth. And also test the potentiometer for the speed control. And we should be done. We're ready for the lake test.